Bally's might be no more. We have some outfield prospects to talk about, some old friend alerts, and we'll get into some theories on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Guardians. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. My name is Jeff Ellis. I'm one of the two co-hosts of said show, Locked On Guardians. Longtime hoster of this show. We're got to be getting close to 900 episodes. I actually haven't looked in a while, but it's hard to believe. I've probably done about 1,000 podcasts by now.
That's a lot of podcasts. I'm Justin Ladd. I don't know. I never did count how many podcasts I've been on with you at this point, but I'm still glad people are listening and engaging and making comments and stuff like that. So that's good. I have never been in a top 10 list anywhere, so I can feel the pain of one of the guys we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, we'll get into it. There's some reasons why guys fall off or why, that specific player isn't mentioned. I mean, not to do too much teasing, but let's just go ahead and say that I don't even think that's the top outfielder in the system on your list. So I'll just...
Ooh, maybe not. Gotta listen.
But a few quick old friend alerts. Gavin Collins signed with the Tampa Bay Rays. That's interesting. Just they're collecting Guardians catchers with Mejia and Collins there now. In addition to that, Cesar Hernandez is signing with Detroit. Gives them another defensive first second baseman. So they can just have, two really good defensive second basemen. I believe it's a non-roster invitee, so no guarantee he makes the team. But with him and Scope, those are eerily similar players on the same roster. So kind of a weird choice. But hey, to each their own in terms of team building. Let's start off with the interesting news of the day. Bally Sports are preparing for bankruptcy. As you longtime listeners might recall, around this time last year, I was discussing that I thought that Bally Sports was going to go under by about mid-season and we'd see what happened games. Well, I was wrong. They lasted the full season, but it doesn't look good that they could go under before the season begins. And this is a multifaceted issue because, well, for many reasons. I'll just say that there are a lot of things we're going to talk about here with this. I know that's non-descriptive, but I throw it to Justin, let him kind of take point on what he thinks the most interesting part of this Bally's situation is going to be.
Well, I think the biggest base for who's watching baseball, unfortunately, is an older crowd. You have a lot of people who still watch on cable. I don't know how many people are watching as cord cutters. I know a lot of people who are cord cutters just don't watch, and that's a problem. So I think a lot of their base has to do with cable companies, and they're talking about, they're hoping to keep the channels operating with some sort of deal through bankruptcy. I don't know how this works. I don't pretend to be literate in these sort of financial terms or most, to be honest. No, don't ever take money advice from me. So when we get to the betting segment, definitely don't do that either. Just a forewarning.
But you aren't $8.6 billion in debt.
I am not. I'm in enough debt, but not that much debt, thankfully. I don't know. I'm just curious to see what happens. Like, they were hoping that this new direct-to-consumer app that bypasses cable was going to save them a little bit. So far, it looks like it hasn't caught on quite yet, and baseball is not even a part of that because there are so many weird different different rights to the TV stuff. I don't know if they end up having to go with a streaming service, like let's say I don't know. I think they'll do it as a package. Like, they'll probably try to sell it across the board. But let's say like Bally Sports or Great Lakes goes to Amazon or whatever, Peacock, and they sell the rights to that. You're gonna have a lot of people who don't have that kind of thing. You're gonna be missing out a lot of your audience. People won't do that. So that would be a concern. And I think also this is gonna take away money coming into the franchises. And I think you could see a lot of owners who already claim they have bad TV deals cry poor and not put more money into the team because now they're going to say the TV revenue isn't there, which to TV revenue has become the biggest driver. People will say, "Oh, well, you got to go, go to games and buy tickets." TV money is what's been driving baseball for the last several years now. It's been TV money and advertising, and that's you still have the national TV deals like ESPN and Fox and all that other stuff, and money coming in from that, and who knows what they do with the money from BAMTech sale and all that stuff, but. TV revenue has been and I think that's all shared, right? When the TV revenue comes in from the national TV contracts,
yes, that's 60
that's
million.
all shared. Yeah,
60.1 million for every team. That is shared.
Yeah, so they're getting a big chunk of money from that. There was the BAMTech sale. Who knows how much money they're getting from MLB TV and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know if they don't have their.
I think MLB TV is part of that 60 million. I think that's
yeah. This is okay. This is where they're a little bit different, where each market is allowed to go out and make their own TV contract. So the Dolans went out and created STO, and they sold it to Fox eventually, and the Yankees have Yes, and like Pittsburgh is on Root Sports versus Bally's, whatever. There's Root in Pennsylvania and Texas, and I think Seattle is on Root Sports Network, but you can go out and you can negotiate your own media rights deal locally between radio and TV. That's where maybe this is a little bit different out here. If the Guardians aren't able to do that, I don't know, and other teams, not just the Guardians, the Reds, whoever else, I could see, especially the Reds, the way the comments Phil Castellini makes, or is it Bob? I forget which one. They both put their foot in their mouth, but
Phil has been the worst of the two. The Sun.
Okay, well, either way, if I could see a lot of owners just crying poor and saying, well, the TV revenue we used to have isn't coming in, so we can't invest as much in the team. So this is where it's a real problem. Major League, there's talk of the league stepping in and securing the rights and just figuring it out from there, so that way they don't have a risk of not having games on TV, because that would be a disaster, wouldn't it? Could you imagine baseball comes around the corner and, oh, guess what? Now, if you live in a market that had a Bally's network, guess what? You can't watch games. And that's like, I don't know, 20 different baseball teams, maybe 30, not 30. There's 30 in the league. But that could be like 20 different baseball teams that were on Bally's potentially not being on the network.
Well, I think they'd find a way to have them covered. If nothing else, I bet they would take away blackout restrictions for that year. I would bet.
Oh, you really think not? Okay.
Yeah, see, because the reason the blackout restriction is there is because of those individual driving to sell those TV contracts. So since there would be no TV contract, there'd be no reason for blackouts. So they would probably lift it for a year, and then those teams might get a bigger cut of the MLB. That'd be the following. Because here's, for those who want like a little more nitty gritty, basically Bally Sports were really dumb and did not understand Sinclair were really dumb. They didn't know what cord cutting was. They weren't even thinking about it. They paid Fox Sports for all of these networks at the peak of value right before everything collapsed. So they paid way too much money for this network of teams. And then they charge cable networks a lot, which is DirecTV dropped Bally Sports. They're not willing to pay. They don't think it's worth
Spectrum
it.
did too.
Yeah, most Spectrum, places are dropping them.
Yeah. Even YouTube TV did. Like all the streaming services dropped it. Like I think the only one that has it is like Fubo TV right now.
Yeah. No, so everyone kind of dropped it because it was just they were charging outrageous rates and it wasn't worth it for those networks. And Sinclair got a bailout with partnering with I can't remember what gambling organization it was, but they partnered with someone that was also part of their app and their advertising, and that bailed them out for a year. They owe $2 billion to MLB for this year. That's how much they owe combined to teams, is $2 billion. They're already nearly $9 billion in debt. I don't see a way for them to be saved. They don't have enough positive assets to balance this out. So it's going to be interesting. Cleveland's TV contract, for those who are curious, does get them $47 million, which is, by the way, $1 million less than the Rays, Reds, and the Athletics. It's not great. It's 8th worst in baseball. But here's what's funny. Teams below them, the Twins get less. The Brewers, the Rockies, the Padres. This is as of 2020, and that was the last official stuff I could find. The worst contracts, though, the Brewers are somehow at $28 million. The Marlins were at $20 million. The Marlins signed a 15-year, $270 million deal. The other side of things, the Dodgers get $239 million. So when you talk about like why teams can spend more than others, right there. Even the White Sox, like the White Sox at the time this happened, were getting more than the Yankees.
And that is the biggest thing I think you can point to. People say there's no small markets, there's only small owners, to borrow a phrase in the acting thing. And then part of that's true, but also, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You spelled it out right there with the TV contracts. There is no chance Cleveland, Tampa Bay, the Brewers would ever come close to the Dodgers in terms of how much they would get from TV rights. And you just showed right there in the numbers. That is how you differentiate the markets easily, and that's how you can tell who is in the tier with who. Yeah, but Cleveland signed their deal. I think their deal was signed back when they sold STO back to Fox,
which is also junk. Because just to interrupt you real quick, which everyone loves, because they also got a lump sum that never gets put into that total. They got like a 200, no, it was like 300 or 400 million lump sum. So whenever the Dolans cry poor, they made a TV network for a year to then pocket hundreds of millions of dollars. Like that is not part of what goes to the team. They made a profit.
27 million,
they made a profit on top of the money they get. So so just to throw that in there.
We probably should mention too, if you haven't been following the story for a couple of years now, because obviously Disney bought Fox. That was this is what started this all. So Disney, which owns ABC, which owns ESPN, bought Fox, and then I think the FCC ruled that they could not have ESPN and the regional sports network, so they had to sell.
I think they chose to divest. They just didn't. The ESPN was already hemorrhaging money. Wasn't there a degree of
I think the FCC forced them to sell because they said it was going to be a monopoly, which the one time they want to cry monopoly out there. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that.
I don't know what you mean with shortages of amoxicillin and or baby formula.
Yikes. So now they're forced to sell, and now they're in bankruptcy. I can't believe how much money this company was allowed to take on. Like it was said when they bought this company that they were taking on a lot of debt to do it. I'm like, how are they allowed to take on so much debt? And then now the article says, I'm reading on Cord Cutter News, which is citing numbers from Bloomberg. I know this is all super exciting stuff to our listeners. They're like, really? This isn't what we came here for. But it says Sinclair is going to. It is because it potentially affects whether or not you're going to be able to watch the Guardians on TV this year, or where you're going to be able to do it.
If they're going to lose
revenue stream,
30%, 40% of their revenue stream.
Right. And like we said, TV money is where the bulk of their money comes in right now. It's not ticket sales. They're going to have to hope to make some of that up. I think either way, they're going to commit a loss. So Cleveland's TV deal was set to end in 2027. That was how long it ran through. I don't know if this gives them a chance to go out and rebid. But like locally, I'm trying to think of what cable network is going to buy it. Like Spectrum's not buying this. I don't know where they're no one's buying this because this is it's a money loser. No one's going to buy it. They're going to have to. The sport's going to have to step in, purchase the media rights, like you said, either do something I don't think they'll ever do and lift the blackouts, which I would pay money on top of what I buy MLB TV every year because I like watching out of market games when I get a chance. And it also gives me a discount on MLB TV, which I use a lot. I would pay money on top of what I pay for a normal MLB TV package to make sure I'm not blacked out of local teams. Like I would pay money on top of that. Like you can say, okay, it's $108 a year for MLB TV. You got to pay $220 a year to get your local team. I mean, if I had the money, I would do it. I know not everyone's going to say they can put that in their budget, but I'm saying I would because I can, and it's of value to me. But I just think that if you think that MLB Network is going to lift the blackout restrictions if this happens without doing something that's going to piss off the consumers,
it would definitely be like you're going to be able to buy the local package is what it's going to be.
Right. That's what I think is going to happen. They're not going to do anything out of the goodness of their heart to consumers because that's not how Major League Baseball ever operates. Let's be honest.
And I think, the one thing I want to stress is I know they have a bad deal. I 100% agree. Like this is a bad deal that the Guardians signed, but at the same time, the bottom has dropped out of TV contracts all over in multiple sports. It's, there's worries I know in the NBA about kind of like that this stuff isn't going to keep going up. And I think the thing we've seen is that cord cutters are going to cut no matter what, that this isn't enough to keep cord cutters on. And that's part of the reason that cable companies are letting them go. So they'll probably maybe able to get more. This could be something where it's a benefit, but there aren't a lot of people out there who can put together the money to or care enough to be able to do something to chase the major. Like, I think, this is a chance where something like Peacock or Amazon might jump in, and it's another tier you got to buy. Like what specifically, I would pay attention to Apple TV because they're doing this with the MLS. So they already have a system in place that they are doing, and they already have a deal where they are on. So I think I would watch for Apple TV as a place where this could end up.
I would stress though, MLS is not. I mean, I know Major League Baseball has fallen. Well, no,
I'm not saying NFL they're comparable, but I'm just saying they have at least an infrastructure to do this.
Yeah. Before we move on, I'd love to hear anybody, whether you want to hit us on Twitter or on YouTube with comments, how you watch the Guardians. So how do you have cable? Do you have a streaming service? If any of the streaming services even have Bally's right now, I don't know which ones do, or if you MLB TV, if you're out of network, or maybe you just listen on the radio only. I know some people who just listen on the radio only now.
Yep.
Let us know.
We are going to jump in here, and we'll come back, and we're going to get into the outfield prospects. The one group we have not handled yet, the group that is very deep and very divisive on today's Locked On Guardians, but the NFL playoffs are here. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free guaranteed bets. You place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel has all of your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. We've talked. We like the Bengals this weekend. All that on the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 free in bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. So MLB released their top 10 outfielders, and I think a lot of people expected a Cleveland player to be on it, and there was not. It's a good list. Corbin Carroll, I'm surprised. I thought he maybe wouldn't qualify. Him and Jordan Walker, one could make a case, are the two best prospects in baseball. I wouldn't fight you on it. Jaison Chorio at 3. It's like one could make a case for those 3 all in the top 5 prospects if you really wanted to. It might be aggressive, but you could. Drew Jones at 4 is a little high for me, just because the injury. And with him, he hasn't really played. Like, I really like him, but to put him that high, I feel like he is you would think he's like a generational talent based off of what's happening.
That recency bias again.
Yeah. And for like him and Elijah Gray aren't that far separated in my mind, or Elijah Green, I should say. And Green isn't even present. James Woods. He's a great story.
Hard to argue.
Yeah. He had a heck of a year. But it was all in A ball. So if you want to place an argument, it's a little aggressive for me, just because he's walking a lot more, which is good. But he was all tools and just like one of the worst swings around when he was drafted. Great developmental story. He could end up being the best part of that trade for Soto. Zach Veen.
I love Zach Veen.
I like him. I feel like he has been production wise in my mind not quite what I expected. I think there's a few areas where I thought he'd do a little bit more. Pico Armstrong has had some ups and downs. I feel like he got placed here again because of, his defense. They gave an 80 grade to, and like he's been famous for forever. But I don't know if I'd put him 7. The fact they put a 70 hit tool on Frelick. I love Sal Frelick. I was a little surprised to see him that high, but I have no problem with it. Robert Hassel it's not. Veen's been good. Hassel's the one who's not quite lived up to the hype from that draft class. And Colton Cowser's been fantastic. It's
I
a
saw
fine
Pete
list.
Armstrong last year when the Captains played South Bend in the playoffs, and I was really interested to see Petey Halpin and Pete Armstrong kind of go, quote unquote head to head, even though they're not really facing each other. But Pete Armstrong had a good series. He was fun to watch.
Yeah, it's this is probably one of the lists that's actually one of their better ones, if I'm being honest. It's a solid list. Would I take every single guy on this list over George Valera? Would you?
Every guy on this list right now?
Yes.
Yes, I would.
I agreed. I would as well. Like that's why
I would say that every one of these players, if they were in the Guardian system, would be their top position player prospect. Not pitching, but position player. I might still put it. I mean, I would even say if they had Corbin Carroll, he'd be their top prospect overall above Espino.
I think any of those top three would be their top prospect overall.
I could see like Drew Jones not being over Espino.
I could honestly see. I could see James Woods
Armstrong
being up there. I wouldn't know. Like for me, it's like maybe Zach Veen is the last guy where I'm like could potentially be like their number one prospect.
Yeah. But Sal Frelick would be their top position player prospect. Hassel.
See, I would still go Naylor over Frelick. I would go Naylor over that second half of that list.
I don't know. I really like Frelick, but yeah. So not Valera. So we agree.
Yeah,
not on this list.
Yeah. It's for me. It's just like positional value is going to elevate. Like I like Frelick, but like if Frelick works out, he's probably Steve Kwan, and if Naylor works out as a catcher with what he projects, like that's more valuable.
Yeah, I think Frelick might have a little more power than Kwan, but maybe not by much. Maybe it's splitting hairs at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I still think he's a fantastic prospect. And I mean, how could the Brewers have two guys on this list? And Joey Weimer is a really interesting player as well. So,
I love Joey Weimer. I've made no bones about
we still haven't done our Brewers episode yet. We haven't done
yeah. I feel so bad. I don't want to root against the Brewers because I actually really enjoy their team, and we also have we both know somebody who works in their system who I like quite a bit, and I would hate to root against them, but there are players on that team that I think would be great for Cleveland. So we will do that eventually. Maybe that'll be a July episode, but
yeah, no, it's like I said, it's a good team, it's a fun team, but it's they have after years of being really bad at development, they're just loaded to the hilt with these outfield prospects. And, we've talked about this list here. We went kind of long in segment 1, so I'm going to do this thing where I'm going to have us actually break for segment 2, and then we're going to come back and discuss who the top outfielders are in Cleveland system and what's up with Valera. Why is Valera seemingly all over the place dropping on today's episode of Locked On Guardians? Okay, so I kind of teed up various things, honestly, at the throughout this episode when it comes to this outfield group. But having talked with you, and you and I we should have almost just recorded it as like a bonus episode. You and I spent an hour and a half discussing our top prospect list, which we'll get into soon, moving guys around. And at the end of the day, I still have Valera as my top outfielder. But it's a tenuous hold, but he is not yours. Who do you have number one in this system?
I really like Will Brennan. I think that there is a higher probability that Will Brennan, I shouldn't say nobody, but because that's not the third and fourth guy on the list maybe could match Valera's upside and even surpass it. But Valera's obviously got more upside than Will Brennan, but I just feel like Brennan's going to be a safer bet, and I still like the ability to make contact, and I like everything except for the power. Like Valera's obviously got 30 home run power. Will Brennan does not have that, but I think Will Brennan can hit for a decent average. And even if he ends up being a platoon guy, there's a chance that he could only be a platoon guy, and he might hit 15 home runs at his peak. Like I could see Will Brennan hitting 25 to 30 doubles, 15 homers, stealing 20 bases, gets on base. And I really like Brennan's defense. I like his speed, his arm better than Valera. I don't think Valera would be. I think Valera can play center. Like I think he'd be. I don't know, fine. I wouldn't say like it'd be great. I think Brennan is a more likely a center fielder than Valera. So everything but power, I have better for Brennan at this point, honestly. So that's why he's my number one outfield prospect. And maybe that's more he's above him now because of where Valera has fallen versus where Brennan has surpassed him. Maybe they're more on an even level now.
Yeah. If, describing Brennan, can I throw a comp at you?
Sure. I've got a couple.
Pre-breakout Michael Brantley.
Yes, that's definitely one of them. I had a couple. I had Andrew Benintendi as one of them.
I can see that.
Adam Eaton Adam Eaton. I'm trying to think of the other one. I mean, there is some Steve Kwan there. I think the biggest detriment for Brennan offensively is he's got some aggressiveness. Like I wouldn't compare his aggressiveness to Oscar Gonzalez, but where Steve Kwan is sometimes borderline passive, Brennan is a little too aggressive, and he'll chase like a high fastball or he'll chase a curveball in the dirt. But anything in the zone, he's going to handle with ease, and he can hit it to all fields. Like, if you throw a strike in the zone, he's probably going to do something with it. He still has enough plate discipline. It's just, he does have a little more aggressiveness in his game. And he doesn't really have a ton of power right now. Like I said, it's mostly doubles power. I would say 15 home runs. That's why I said Benintendi, I think. And he's got good speed. So maybe not. Okay, I shouldn't say. Let's go with Boston
Above
Benintendi.
Average? Okay.
Yeah. Not Kansas City Benintendi, where it was just an empty 300.
Yeah. Yeah, he's, it's going to be interesting to see what opportunities he gets. I saw someone tweeting today that apparently Chris Vallejo was on one of our sister shows in the Locked On Network and mentioned like Freeman and Brennan as his breakout candidates. So
interesting that they got a coach to admit something like that. That's
I didn't, someone tweeted at someone else that, so I don't have the specifics, but I saw someone mention that. So if I have bad information, I will apologize right now. But so here's the thing. Before we get into like the stats of why George Valera is kind of down, I have to point out some important things. One, 2020 was lost due to COVID, but two, George Valera's had problems with health. So this is actually the first time George Valera had ever played in 90 games in a season. He had never hit that threshold before. And all of his data was essentially in the lower levels. He played 20 games last year in AA. So this past year, he finally broke 100 games, and he also played in the upper majors. So he had two upper minors. And so he had two big shifts occurring. And listen, a lot of people talk about age relative to level. And I've been one of those people. But what I think we have to mention here and what I have to kind of vent about in general is age relative to level is not what it was even 2 years ago. With the elimination of the kind of short season ball, listen, Logan Allen getting to AA in year one and AAA in year two. Cleveland would slow play. Like, I mean, he was in the old system, his second year in the minors, he would have gotten to AA. It wouldn't have even been a year one thing like they did. Everyone's moving so much quicker. So the age relative to level gets thrown off. The ages are still high because there are teams who like to throw a lot of veteran guys or quad A types, and they're just not very talented. Like if they were good enough to be replacement level, they'd be in the big leagues. They're emergency players. So the overall the age at each level stays about the same, but the overall talent is moving quicker than ever. So it doesn't mean as much. It just doesn't. And we also have hard data facts that show that teams, listen, the Tampa Bay Rays probably got the Guardians by having Jake Bauers be an above average bat at a young age at multiple levels. Like teams were very cognizant that teams like the Guardians were going very age heavy, and we're trying to kind of inflate value by moving quickly players through the minors. And we've seen even Cleveland switch. They drafted a pair of 19-year-old high school kids a year ago. That would have never happened. They took draft eligible. So they went against age models. Yes, Jacob Zibin is an age model guy. Some of the other guys they were, but they also, for the first time ever, went well against age models. So it's like even the Guardians, the original age kings, were like, okay, we're going to take guys who don't go with that model. Like it's one of those things. It's a data point. For a time, I would make a statement where it was one of the most important data points. Now I think it's just another data point. I think it is one of those things that is definitely gets overblown. So if anyone's going to come at us and be like, he was 21 and double in AAA, I'm like, that's great. So we're most elite talents. Like that is, if you're an elite player, an elite minor league talent, you're about that age at that level. That is the average age at that level for elite talent anymore. That's how this thing has shifted so much. So he's a little bit younger maybe, but I mean, it's kind of in line with what we're seeing overall. And you'll explain it better to me. You want to talk about the Z swing and the contact rate that are scaring people off?
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to say too, I think you're 100% right on the age relative to level 2. Baseball Reference is really good tool for this, where they will, if you search for minor league data for a player in the minor leagues, it'll show you how much younger he is than the average level. So you'll go in there and you'll see, okay, well, Will Brennan was a year, or George Valera was 2 years younger than the average age of the player at AAA, and that's fine, like you said, that's fine, but the elite players, the best of the best prospects who are at that level, are that young. So AAA is a holding ground for a lot of
Sandy
guys.
Leon spent a lot of the year in AAA and counts into that age model.
I mean, I remember AA when Akron had Davis Stoneburner and Kyle Davies, and the average age of that one Akron Arrows team was like 30. So.
And by the way,
definitely changed. That was 10 years ago.
The AAA age used to be, even like in the last 5 years, was 27 or 26.
Now it's like 25.
Down, it also shows there's a shift.
Yeah, I will say more guys got held back because of COVID, so that changed things as well. But yeah, the guys who are moving through, and this is what Cleveland always says, they don't promote guys based on number of at bats, or I mean, they will. There is a threshold there where they will look at a certain amount of innings pitched and at bats, but they always say the player dictates where he should be playing at and the level he should be playing. I mean, they even moved John Kenzie Noel up last year to double A before I thought he was ready, and he struggled. And by the way, we're not including John Kenzie Noel in our outfield prospect group, just so everybody's aware. But yeah, the thing with Valera, the biggest issue everybody has is, he's got good patience at the plate. He's just got some swing and miss issues, and he struggles to make contact in the zone, in certain areas of the zone, mostly, the upper third of the strike zone and kind of down in, just down in general. I think his swing is, I don't want to say his swing is grooved, but it's definitely geared towards, it's geared towards middle and low. Most left-handers like the ball low and in, and he does too. And he could go the other way with some stuff too. I think his biggest issue is the top third of the zone, and I think a little bit below it. But the biggest, well, I'll let you say, because you're the one who brought it up yesterday, what John Sickles said. Why do prospects fail?
Oh, so I love John Sickles. I know he doesn't do prospects anymore, but he's one of the guys who set this up for me. And I bought his book years ago. It was a PDF, and where he went through like every single ranking and talked about why players fail. And I mentioned this many times. And with pitchers, it's inability to find the zone or injuries. With hitters, it's injuries or contact. Mm-hmm. And the thing with Valera is all of a sudden
zone contact.
And like when you look at him and people want to talk about, well, I think people are overreacting to this year. He was young for the level. One also has to point out that it is not a coincidence that when he moves up to higher levels where guys are able to hit that top of the zone, to hit the bottom of the zone, A-ball pitching is terrible. Like guys can't hit the areas that were weak, where he was weak at. So he's actually facing pitching that for the first time can exploit the areas he struggles with, and it wasn't good. And it's a bit of a red flag. Like his Z contact rate and the low overall contact rate are in areas with a lot of like failed prospects. Like it is 1 year. He could totally, learn and grow as a hitter, and they'll work with him. But like he is in a area that is littered with where big names go to die. That's a concern.
It is. And I still think he could be a good major league player. I think we're talking about a guy who still, even with those concerns, could be a 20 to 25 home run guy.
I mean, there's a chance Garcia in Texas is like a guy very similar to him profile wise.
Yeah, and there's a chance he might be a platoon guy too. Like there's always that concern, and he's also stopped running. Like I'm not really sure what that led to last year. Things could have been weird, but we saw a lot of guys run more last year because of the new rules. He stopped running last year too, and he still takes walks. Like he definitely has a good eye at the plate. He doesn't chase a ton. He is maybe a little passive at times, but he'll take his walks, and the problem is he just, misses in the strike zone some. So that's why he's fallen back. And that's why some people think he might be a platoon outfielder versus a star like everybody thought he was going to be. It just hasn't quite panned out. So that's why I said I think it's more where we know George Valera is right now versus, Will Brennan kind of taking off. Like Will Brennan has taken off, and I was very close to giving him a higher grade prospect wise than I did, but I held back a little bit just because I was concerned about the platoon and the lack of power and a little bit of aggressiveness. But I think it's just that's kind of where, and I also am weary too. I know I'm going long winded here, but you do get prospect fatigue. We talked about it yesterday with Rocchio. Valera has been talked about since he signed in 2016. Like he was a big prospect. People expected, like people were saying he was going to be like Juan Soto early on.
Yeah, I mean, he was given up. Just to interrupt you again, like it drove me insane where people were like, he's got a plus hit tool. Like that was one of the things. Like his hit tool was actually one of the big bragging points. I'm like, no data point, no amount of what he has ever shown us shows this. You just like his swing. Yeah. Like let's be honest, it's not about ability. It's you think it's a pretty swing, and I hate that approach to it. But if you look at any early report on him, it's going to mention a plus hit tool. And guess what? It wasn't true. Like we don't know how to we don't know how to correctly identify hit tools in young players. We don't. Like that's why it's
hard.
It's very hard to do. And Cleveland signs those guys by the bucket load with good hit tools, knowing, you'll get some Rocchios and knowing you also get some Brachos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so and I think that's people putting the Soto and whatever on Valera early on, and just this is the 7th year we're talking, like the 6th year we're talking about, and he got signed 2016, right? Or was it 2017?
Gosh, I
thought it was 16.
But yeah, I just and again, like I actually still have him. I have him on my personal list 8th. No, I have him 9th and Brennan 10th. So he's still my number one outfielder.
I have those reversed, yeah.
Yeah, but he's because there's higher ceiling. But I mean, you're basically hoping that he turns into Carlos Santana, an outfield Santana.
And that's fine. That's fine.
Which is great. I mean, Carlos Santana is probably my favorite Guardian in the last 10 years. That's a really, but that doesn't match some of the hype I hear. So I just always want to I just get very nervous when sometimes people start throwing around some silly comps or talking about stuff. So I think your best outcome for him, and when people got mad about the Sean Murphy trade, it's like I was like, you're hoping George Valera can hit like Contreras hit. Like if they wanted an outfielder, it was kind of hard for Cleveland to match that high level type of player. I think there's, like I said, I think what we're seeing around baseball is that there is prospect fatigue on Valera in general, but I think there's also legitimate concerns.
Right, that's my point. There's concerns, but
maybe he was 17.
Maybe part of what happened, like I said, was people thought early on, plus hit tool, the Juan Soto thing, like people thought about that early on. And this might have been who he's been all along, and we're saying, oh, he's really fallen. No, he just ended up who he ended up gonna. We thought he, or people who he was meant, who he is as a player, and versus what people thought he was going to be early on. Like that's the unfortunate problem is people thought he was going to be a lot better, and now it makes him look like he's not as good a player people thought he was going to be. And early hype was an issue.
Yeah, and it's one of those things again where we haven't had as many reps as we'd like to see because of health and COVID, but we have seen like kind of almost like A and high A data is worthless. So it's like, and a lot of the importance in that data is like the first time through, like because the exceptional talents dominate and they move through. And he's been good, but he's definitely struggled on promotion, which isn't also what you want to see. So it's, like I said, he's still my number one outfielder. Why is he my number one outfielder? Because I think he's got plus power. I think he'll probably hit enough to get there. He's a borderline passive at points, which can be a concern. That's also part of some of the, the contact stuff. I'd like to see him maybe be a little more aggressive, but I think Brendan, I think you're kind of hoping that he's going to be, if at peak, like a 50, 55 grade player. It's like Valera has a chance to be plus, and I don't think Brennan has that. But having said that, I think we'll jump to the after show and talk about two guys who, ceilings are higher than either of these players, in my opinion. I think you and I agree on who's 3 and 4. It'll probably even agree on 5, but it's for a team that struggled to produce outfielders, it's maybe the best 5 deep outfield group I can ever recall covering this team. And we'll get into that in the after show. So make sure to join us. And for all of you who listened this week, thank you. We appreciate every one of you joining in and being part of the Locked On Guardians team. Make sure to rate and review, download daily. That all helps. Subscribe on the YouTubes. And, we have a lot of things we're discussing, what we're going to get into. We'll reveal these prospect lists of ours very soon. I know everyone else is doing theirs, so we'll get ours out there. And as always, leave thoughts. Other comment to leave is thoughts about what you'd like to see covered on the show, things you'd like to be things you'd like to see talked about on the show. So make sure to include those. And go Guardians, go! So it's not universal, but between us, I think the third and fourth outfielder are the same players, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
DeLauter and Chorio.
Yeah, easy 3 and 4 right there. And
isn't 5 kind of easy as well? If we're being honest, is there any debate at 5?
Petey Halpin? No, not.
No, I think there's the top 5 is very clear.
This is the best outfield group they've had in quite some time. It goes pretty deep, and it's really sleepers and guys that are far down below we don't know about much, but they're at least it's the most interesting to talk about, I think, in a long time.
What I think is kind of funny is I bet we have the same top 6.
Well, we don't, because I have Brennan over Valera.
No, but I mean players. I think if we went to 60
overall,
we'd have the same. Yeah, because is 6 Priest for you as well?
Oh, for outfield?
Yeah.
I have Priest ranked as a first baseman.
Okay.
So that's.
I have first base / outfield because I think he could do either. I think
he could play both, but I don't have him in my outfield group. Okay. No, I have Halpin, sorry, and then Joe Lampe.
Lampe would be next if you take out Priest.
Yeah, Lampe, and then I also have Wuilfredo Antunez, who just kind of popped up recently. He's up there for me. I also would throw in Yerlin Luis, the guy they just signed to, is up there. And there's guy Lipscomb. There's Burgos.
I don't put in the new guys. That's just a natural rule because I don't know them. I really haven't had much to scout on them, and I'm basically debating Lipscomb versus Wuilfredo. If I'm being honest, that's kind of the internal debate for me right now. But it is as usual, we are mostly agreeing in terms of this stuff. But
would you have so we agree. We'll talk about DeLauter real quick, but for Chorio, would you have Chorio where he is had his older brother not had the gear he had? Let's say that his older brother doesn't even play baseball. Would you have Jaison Chorio as high as you would, or would you say it's complex league stats and who cares?
No, he wouldn't be. The bloodlines matter. The bloodlines matter a lot.
The stats are good. There are some things not saying this is going to translate, but the fact that he didn't strike out a lot as a 17-year-old in his first year, like you said this a couple of shows ago, if you strike out and have a hard time making contact in the complex leagues, you're not going anywhere. Let's be honest. So at least that's a hurdle they have to pass. And Jaison Chorio has passed that hurdle. Obviously, the stats themselves aren't going to translate as he moves up. At least not that we can guarantee they're going to translate, but he passes the hurdle of the fact that he doesn't swing and miss a lot. That's the first checkpoint, right?
100%. Yeah. That's the first eliminator.
We both agreed DeLauter's 3, and I actually contemplated putting DeLauter over Valera, but I haven't seen enough yet. I don't know, and I don't want to discount Valera that much. But I would probably say I only have Chorio above Halpin because of Chorio's older brother. Otherwise, I would have had Halpin because I saw a lot of Halpin last year, and I think he'll be a very nice. I don't know if he's going to be a full-time starter in the majors. I think he can play good defense. He's got a great arm. He has some plate discipline. I don't know how far the bat's going to take him though. But I would still have him over. Sure, I think the brother factor has taken over.
And I do want to say again, I often don't pay a ton of attention to complex league data unless someone's really mashing. And then I do a deeper dive. When I'm sitting there and I go to Fangraphs and I look at runs created plus for the entire minors, and then it's Chorio is also exceptional at that. Like, so it's not like we're just going, oh, his big brother is really good. Even though I have my longstanding theory, I should reshare that document. I need to really dive into it, that younger brothers are better than older brothers. We'll ignore the bandos from this week on the show. But, it's a lot of times that's the case, that you see more success in the younger brother. Like I said, it's more of a thing I've often posited, but I need to do the full research on. But he's a mix of like just exceptional play, like doing everything you want, plus the bloodlines, and it helps. But yes, he probably wouldn't be in my top 20 if he didn't have a brother who was one of the best prospects in baseball. That's
I mean, he would still be the 5th best outfield prospect in the system. I think I would, even without his brother, I would still have him behind Petey Halpin.
Yeah. And I'm, because here's like, do I get like, I'll save getting to Joe Lampe and because, there's reasons why he is where he is, but yeah, he is. I mean, the Chorio is fascinating because, I mean, he could end up being number 1 in a year. Like, if he really went out and like dominated across 2 levels, like he could fly up this list, especially if guys graduate. Like, he could be in that discussion. And then he could also just poop the bed and we drop him out of the top 30. I mean, but then again, you could say it for basically anyone. I mean, maybe not to the number 1, but for a lot of guys, it's like Valera. You could say that about it. And, we kind of, it's like if Tyler Freeman was available, he wouldn't be in a top 10, I don't think. He doesn't qualify as a rookie. I had him in my first list. I think I had him about 14 or 15, but there were places that had him number 1 a year ago. I had him top 3. Like, it is, you can a lot. Listen, Lavastida was 11th for me a year ago. He's in the 20s. I mean, him and Naylor almost just swap spots. Like, so much can change in a year. But Chorio and DeLauter are fascinating because DeLauter, did he maybe make Baseball Prospectus's top 100?
Yeah, no, because I think they had less guys on their list. I'm not sure.
But like anything you say on DeLauter is just about his cape, which it's been over a year since he played in the cape because he got hurt. He and that's been a problem for him in college, is health. Like, he has lots of health issues. And then my one concern, I know it's one bad weekend, and I'm always the king of saying, let's not overreact. Like, I talked about this when Nick Gonzalez got, destroyed by Asa Lacy, but I do kind of get a little bit worried that Chase DeLauter is maybe a loogie. Like, just when you're facing a Messick and a Hubart, and I wasn't just like struggles. I mean, he was like 0-for-4 with 4 strikeouts or something. Like, I mean, he got owned in those games. It was ugly. And he's just missed so much developmental time again because of injuries and COVID that he is like, I feel like he's almost like a 19-year-old kid that you're getting. Like, he's very raw. So I love I hesitate to say 5-tool upside, like huge raw athleticism, big raw power, but raw is the word with DeLauter. And that's why he's kind of lower on this list for me. He's in the high teens. I kind of kept moving guys around. But he's like high teens, kind of after some of the safer guys. Because, I mean, if you told me that, he became a future all-star, I'd believe you. If you told me that he scuffled and double in AAA, I'd believe you. Like, he has some of the highest outcomes because we have so little for him, and health is in. The Guardians are not afraid to blink with Espino, Williams, and now DeLauter. That's some high injury risk, high picks over the past few years. It is. I mean, what was DeLauter's other injury? It was just his foot, right? Did he have something else? The ankle, and then he had some scuffs earlier on as well, and then there was something before the ankle that had like slowed him up. That was part of the reason, and I can't remember what it was now. But there was always a small thing here or there with him. Okay, I don't think I knew that. I thought it was just last year. I mean, they do put a lot of stock into the Cape. Obviously, you said that, and that's been 2 years now. They have had success with that. Yeah, I mean, Hunter Gaddis had a bad junior year. They drafted him almost entirely based off of his Cape performance. Yeah, they've done that too. They've drafted guys where they don't care. They are more willing to accept a
a down junior year if you had a good sophomore year.
That was DeLauter had potential 1-1 hype going into his junior year.
Yeah.
And then
and he might have gotten there and not broken his foot. I mean,
yeah.
if he plays, let's say he,
I don't know, because it's like when you play at James Madison, he played the important games. He wasn't going to play anybody the rest of the year, and that's kind of the problem. Like that's going to be the same thing if you're like a small, unless you're a pop-up guy. It is that recency bias again, where it's like, well, he's not facing anyone. Like you don't get those good reps. Those guys always slide. They always slide, even if they're performing well, because it's like, oh, who have they faced?
So let's say he still struggled against Florida State, Hubart and Messick, but he plays the entire year healthy.
Yeah,
I don't think he gets to where Cleveland picks if he's healthy the whole year, regardless of that weekend against Florida State.
I think there's a chance he still gets there because we saw like a Cam Collier slide. It's so hard to judge the draft. So many guys.
Well, that was all based on money, though. It had nothing to do with talent.
It was, but I mean, even like a Drew Gilbert, who wasn't that expensive, who a lot of people like loved the metrics on, slid to the back of the first round. Like it was a really good, it was a really good draft as well. So like, I'd have to pull it up and look at it. Like I wouldn't be shocked, but like I also wouldn't have been shocked if like instead if the Royals took him instead of Gavin Cross, for instance, like that might have occurred. Like he could have jumped Gavin Cross, and maybe you're talking about Cross or Gilbert to Cleveland instead. But I think what we've seen with those small school guys is like, I go back to like Kyle Lewis. He fell out of the top 10, even though like he entered the year with 1-1 hype. And then his whole big knock was, he strikes out too much. He cut his strikeout rate like in half, and he fell out of the top 10. So there is definitely a recency bias with those JUCO guys. So I think his value was always going to peak at the end of that Cape. I mean, Nick Gonzalez, was he the COVID year? It's, kind of a similar story where he was like talked about 1-1 and then ended up going like 8 or 9 to the Pirates. It's a small school guys always pay a price for being the small school guy.
Yeah, for sure. That's always where you can find value if you really feel like you trust your scouts and trust the data there. All right. So we talked about DeLauter. I think DeLauter is easily potentially a top 100 guy next year. Yeah. Like that's a guy you could say could shoot up the top of the league. He could be Cleveland's top outfield prospect by this time next year easily.
But at the same time, I debated flipping him and Justin Campbell in my rankings. So, it's a lot of room to cover at those draft picks.
I don't know if Jaison Chorio will get to a high enough level. Like, Jackson got to AA last year. He flew through low A and high A. I don't know that Cleveland will be quite as aggressive as Milwaukee. Yeah. The funny thing is, like, Milwaukee had no reason to be aggressive with him because they had Sal Frelick, they had Joey Weimer, they had Garrett Mitchell, they had other outfield prospects that are fantastic ahead of him. They didn't have to rush Jackson. Jackson kind of forced their hand. I don't know even if Cleveland will be that aggressive. Like, I think a good scenario for Jaison Chorio this year is that he ends the year in Lake County. I think if he is playing in the middle of summer in Lynchburg, that would be good because he'll start out in the Arizona Complex League, possibly, unless he just really blows their doors off in spring training. Because there's not a lot of room in the outfield in high A or low A this year.
I feel like I could see a world where, like, especially if like Akron makes the playoffs, he gets like one of those like 8 at bat promotions. Like I could see a world where that happens.
He would have to play like at least a month in Lake County to do that, though.
Yeah, no,
I could see it where Chorio is like in Lake County in like August. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, see, I thought maybe he could get there earlier.
I would hope so. I would like to believe, like, see that happen, but that would be like aggressive. This is not an organization that is typically aggressive. But then again, like you said, the loss of the short season team changes things, and the elite talents have to get moved because they tell you where they should be. So maybe he tells them he has to be there. I don't know. I hope that's the case. I would love to see that. I think we okay. Chase DeLauter has to start in Lake County too. While we're on that subject, right? He has to start in high A. You can't start him in low A, right?
I think they could start him in low A because he's missed so much time, and you want him to just like start in a place where he can kind of build some confidence. And he's a small school guy. It's like outside of that Cape, he was facing a lot of guys who don't even get drafted. Like I could see a situation where they want to build confidence. Maybe he's not there long, but I could see a world where he starts there for like a month and then they move him up.
So you're thinking DeLauter and Joe Lampe are both in Lynchburg to start the year with Wuilfredo Antunez and Guy Lipscomb.
I don't know. I think Lampe might be the guy they push up a little bit more.
To Lake County, really? I'd be surprised. I guess he has the more of a longer track record in college, and he played at a bigger.
Didn't he? He's one of the ones who signed and actually got some at bats, right?
Yeah, he had like one game in Lynchburg. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but he did have one game. I think Antunez will get back there.
Well, let's talk. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say you could talk about Guy Lipscomb if you want, because that you kind of feel like you have more interest in him than I. Not that I'm not interested in him, but I think you like him a little more than I do. But we should probably talk about guys that are going to be asked about, like Johnathan Rodriguez and Alexfri, Planez, Isaiah Green.
Before we get there, I think we need to talk about Antunez because I think he's not talked about a ton, and I think, I think why don't you? I don't because it was limited with Antunez.
Yeah, I saw 2 games on MLB TV. I'll be honest, I saw 2 games. It was not a lot, but he did make it.
He doesn't even have a Fangraphs page, I don't believe. Like
he does. He does.
Does he? I typed his name with Fangraphs and it was not pulling. There we go. For some reason, when I used his name plus Fangraphs, the first time I went through, it was pulling up other players. But I mean, they just have him average across the board. It's mostly complex league data, which is part of the problem. He got 5 games in A ball.
Yeah.
So I don't have a ton. Yeah. And, one of the things too, it's like, especially he passes the first strike, the threshold with the strikeouts. It's under like 20% is good. Mm-hmm. And it's nice that he walked when he strike out until we talk about, I've talked about, which essentially walk rate doesn't matter at that level. So,
right.
What's kind of your view on him as he's probably that guy that, is he the most, is he the least talked about? Is he the most valuable prospect or the highest rated potential prospect with the least chatter? Like chatter to value? Is that if we're doing a...
I don't know if I go there. I have to look at my own list again and see where I think who's getting the least amount of talk. Because I would say, like, I don't know. We talked about Nate Furman a little bit. Gabriel Rodriguez is like almost not talked about. The value is there. I guess he's in that discussion, I suppose. I don't know. I don't have a lot on him either. And there's some data floating around out there that I have that's...
Yeah, and I know, like, it's like Fangraphs had him 24. I didn't know where to put him. Like, he's a guy
I don't have him that high. I don't have enough on him to say that.
I feel like he's probably some guy where he's going to be closer to, like, yes, Kat, you do exist. I know. He's going to be, like, in the late 30s for me. Like, I don't know how to really slot him. So, like, I
think it depends... if you think he can play center field, and I have no clue if he can play center field because I didn't see him in center field in Lynchburg. So it depends on if you think he's a center fielder or not. Like the bats, there's good batted ball data. He hits the ball hard. He makes contact in the zone. He makes good swing decisions. He doesn't chase too much. And this is all limited data, and some of it's complex league data. But if batted ball data translates, which I think batted ball data essentially would be a little more sticky in this case, it just really comes down to whether or not you think he's a center fielder, and none of us really know yet because, I don't live in Arizona. You don't live in Arizona. My buddy Joe, who I used to talk to, I haven't heard from him forever. I don't think he goes to games anymore, so I have no idea. But I don't know. He's got a lot of interesting tools across the board. He runs a little bit. He looks like he's got a decent eye for the zone, and there might be some pop. And I think it's going to come down to whether or not he's a center fielder or a corner. Because if he's a corner, he's probably a very fringe prospect because I don't think he's going to hit so much that he is going to be a top prospect. But if he's a center fielder, obviously it looks a little better.
Sorry, my cat ripped out my headphones there. So
he just wanted to listen into. He wanted to listen into Wuilfredo Antunez. I get it.
Yeah, no, he's just an old jerk who thinks he needs every bit of attention all the time. But so with Lipscomb, then maybe end on Lampe. Lipscomb is a high contact guy. The reason there's some athletic traits there with him that I liked, I think he's got like potentially 65
speed,
rate
right?
speed. What?
Yeah. I'll say he's got plus speed. I would think he stole a lot of bases in college.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up his data here, and it's like I don't know if I keep misspelling his name or what's going wrong for me, because he was at Belmont, right? Was that where he was? Which is not a big program, but he hit 406 with a 44 on base, and stole. Where's his stolen bases? 42 bases. It is kind of it's a very Guardians profile where it is, hey, this guy makes a lot of contact. He doesn't strike out a ton. He only struck out 18 times last year in 57 games. He struck out 35 times in his college career, draft eligible sophomore. So good athlete, good contact, was a center fielder in college. I don't know if that's where I don't think I think people think he's probably going to be a left fielder.
Yeah.
So it's more like physical tools. And again, it's hard to translate anything from Belmont too much, but he's a guy again who's closer to 40 for me. And then Joe Lampe is interesting because I feel like some of his rating is like purely based on, hey, this is a Guardians profile. Maybe they can find a little more, which is, that's also Nate Furman. That's also Guy Lipscomb. All three of those guys are kind of identical.
Lampe.
Lampe, Lipscomb, and Lipscomb was fifth or sixth round. Lampe was like the third. I wasn't Furman a day two guy as well. They just they went for that type hard, and Lampe's probably the most polished, played at the highest level. But for any of them to be more than a quad A type, you're kind of hoping that they'll be able to find another gear.
Some gains, right, for sure. Yeah. You want to end it with a little bit of, people are going to ask,
Johnathan Rodriguez, 35 home runs doesn't matter. Home runs do not equal success. I think Yu Chen Chang might have the home run record for AA. And I love you, but it hasn't worked for him.
I love you too.
Well done. Well done. But yeah, it's don't get me wrong, it's great to have high home run totals, but it doesn't translate. It's not a 1-to-1.
I put it out there a while ago. I think it was last year. The guys who had 30 home runs in the minors for Cleveland, last 10 years. Because this was my problem with Oscar Gonzalez too. Is he had 30 home runs, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's why isn't he ranked higher?" And so far, that looks right. But Jordan Brown hit 30 home runs, and Jared Gettard hit 30 home runs, and Bobby Bradley hit 30 home runs, and there was somebody else. Those guys were all Andy Marte was on that list, guys who had 30 home runs.
Russell Brandon, Scott Morgan, Danny Peoples.
Right, and those guys did nothing in the majors. So 30 home runs in the minors doesn't mean what you think it means. And I don't see Rodriguez, the approach working. I know people are going to say, well, you were wrong about Gonzalez, but Rodriguez strikes out more than Gonzalez. At least what Gonzalez had going for him was for a guy who was
consistent. Gonzalez hit
and he, for as aggressive as Gonzalez was, he continued to make contact. It wasn't wow, this guy swings and misses too much. No, he swings a lot. He makes a lot of contact. It's very, very bizarre to see. It's a very unique profile. Rodriguez swings a lot, and he strikes out a lot. The contact is not there the way it was for Gonzalez. That's why I'm not rating him as high.
Can I take a second here? And I want to read you a list of the all-time home run champs at every level of the minors. So tell me how many of these guys are guys or guys who want to be successful. Ken Phelps, Phil Hyatt, Ron Kittle, Rick Lancelota, Tim Laudner, Arlo Engel, Dave Duncan, Tony Solalita, Abdel Isabel, Jeff Jones, Russell Brandon, John Hennel, Willie Darkus, Mitch Einerson, Greg Morrison, Joey Gallo, and Eric Garcia.
Dave Duncan, Joey Gallo, and there was somebody else. It's a list of guys
Russ Brandon,
that was about it. It doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't. It's not a guarantee for success. And You have to have the
Ron
things that go
Kittle
along
played for
with it.
the Indians. You know, he ended up getting a career WAR of 5 after winning.
I think I would think out of the two, if you're going to go with one of the two outfield prospects we're talking about here, in between Planez and Rodriguez, I would go Planez. Planez is a good outfielder defensively. Strikes out less. Yeah, good StatCast data. He's a better defender. Probably doesn't have as good an arm as Rodriguez. Rodriguez has a hose. I will say Rodriguez has a great arm. Planez's arm is nothing to cry about either. It's just not, in the same echelon as Rodriguez's. But, Planez, I think it is at least still – he's also a better runner. Rodriguez is not much of a runner. Planez can run a little. So if you're gonna look at one of those two last year and be like, okay, which one of these guys – because I remember when they signed Planez, and I remember writing about him. I remember other people who had seen him write about him. We were talking about like a potential 5-tool guy, like a star.
He was, a lot of people really liked him.
Yeah, like he was very tooled up. People thought that this is a dude who could maybe play center field, had a great arm, could run. We're talking about like a 2020 center fielder with a plus arm and maybe some defense. And now we're talking about a right fielder with a good arm who is way too aggressive. Like, if you want to find the next Oscar Gonzalez, and I don't even know I still don't know if Gonzalez is going to stick for how long. We'll figure it out. But if you want to find a guy in the minors who, like, okay, who is this guy that no one's really ranking and they don't trust his stuff, and he could be a major leaguer, I would say it's Planez, especially between these two. Like, Rodriguez, to me, I'm sorry, I have him really low on my list. I have Planez a little bit higher.
Nope, that all makes sense to me. It's like I said, it is definitely the deepest group we've seen. It is nice they finally have depth. They have some interesting guys. I don't know if there's any surefire types. I mean, Brennan feels pretty close, but on the whole, it is a group that we
didn't talk about group. Isaiah Green. We didn't talk about Jorge Burgos. We didn't talk about Jose Gomez. Isaiah Green, though, by the way, not great.
No, he's
not great.
Good
I don't love
athletic tools, but I mean, passive. Yeah. No, I've been slowly going through this list of guys, and by the way, it is most of them got to the big leagues, and then most of them, like, I don't think we have anyone with a WAR over 8. So just for the record, it's very ugly overall with that. So I would just say again, don't get too focused on home runs in the minors, but we're well over an hour at this point in time. So I'm sorry, Russell Brandon did get to an 11.2. I did not get to
give that man his due. Come on, give Russell Brandon his due.
I mean, and I bet he'd be closer to 20 if he played in a different era and actually got opportunities. I'll go ahead and say that. Like, he is the exception to the rule. He was the guy who definitely played in an era that did not value him. But yeah, the rest of this list is, and Gallo might be over 10. Let me just go ahead and search that. I'm betting he is. So he's the king of this list probably. But other than that, it's bad. 14.7. So yeah, he is the king of this list. Everyone else, you're kind of hoping for like 1 to 2 good years. Thank you for listening, rating, reviewing, downloading. It helps. The comments, I always respond to every comment at least once. So it's your chance to get that filled, and make sure to tell us what you want us to talk about. We went extra long because this outfield group is extra deep. Again, thank you all. And make sure to check the bell to get the alert, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment. All those things will help with the algorithm that runs things over at YouTube. Feed the algorithm before it eventually feeds on all of us. Thank you for listening, and go Guardians, go.